Hello and welcome to the show. Now, the Dubai circuit was the new fictional race venue for Forza Motorsport 7, and while it is a fun enough track to drive around, it's interesting enough to take a car and visit this location. As an actual race circuit, it doesn't quite work so well. There's little in the way of clear-cut overtaking opportunities, most of the corners being quite high speed, minimal in the way of braking zones. There are a couple of different layouts for this, the main track being about 4 miles long. It's, not a bad circuit at all, but it just doesn't work in terms, certainly for sort of wheel-to-wheel racing, like versus the community or the various challenges and so on that we do. This track, just won't make it into to that kind of roster, if you like. So I was wondering, how could we use the circuit? Chances are you probably won't have seen this circuit used too much on Forza 7. Well, the best bit of the whole area would be, at least to me, the climb up the mountainside, which did get me thinking. You see, a little while ago, we did a King of the Mountain competition at Bathurst, kind of a time attack up the wrong way, around Bathurst. Now, initially, that had intended to be a 1v1 shootout. However, the road was too narrow for that to really work. Well, here at Dubai, much wider roads, overtaking considerably more plausible. So it was off to get a field of cars. We would start with a Timin 9000 and Nismo GTR LM against Hash Brown in a Lotus 211. These cars built to S-Class. The only real rules for the vehicles is that they had to start off as a road car, so we couldn't have things like V8 supercars or classic Formula 1 cars going up here. The winner would progress to the next round. The loser would be going out. You could have the car as light as you liked. This Lotus 211, for example, would be very light indeed. Light, agile, good at getting through the turns. Or you could go for something all-wheel drive. Focus on acceleration, get a good launch off of the line, lead on the way up through the corners, and have to have your opponent overtake you. Because while this is wider than at Bathurst, it is still not an easy task getting past a car here. The Lotus, though, would generally have the measure on this first of the heats. The 211 was just too fast. The Nismo, after the initial kind of launch off the line, Nismo couldn't really close the gap in any way, shape or form, and it would be the Lotus that would progress on to the next round. Second heat, it would be Muri with a Saleen S7 against the first of our all-wheel drive cars, Barack Obama in the Ford RS200. Now, the Ford's small, light, all-wheel drive, and that is potentially a good combination for this course. Sure enough, the Ford is going to lead them into these first corners. The S7, though, well, we know how good the Saleen can be when it comes to the corners as they run up the next part of the course. The Saleen has got the acceleration. The Ford tried his very best to hang it around the outside, tried to get the braking, but just can't quite compete with the grip that the Saleen has to offer. Another peculiarity with this Dubai, or this part of the Dubai circuit, this hill climb, very slidey. All-wheel drive cars can get in trouble. Rear-wheel drive cars are very easy to slip and slide their way up through the course, but both of these two doing a good job of keeping their car pointing in the right direction. The Saleen has managed to extend a little bit more of a gap back to the Ford as they leave the hotel. The finish line just where the kind of cobbled area transitions to the tarmac. Saleen would progress to the next round. The RS200 would be out. And next heat, let's go on with the Nissan GTR up against Sui with the Hoonigan Escort. Now, the Nissan off the line would get a decent gap to the Ford. Again, it's all-wheel drive launch and so on, but it's a considerably heavier car. The GTR, a fairly sizable vehicle. The Hoonigan Escort, very small and very light. Potential for gaining time back as we go into the technical sections. However, there was an issue for the Hoonigan car, and that was oversteer. It just wasn't able to carry the speed, maintain the same sort of speed as the Nissan as the GTR continues to wind its way up through the course, gradually pulling further and further away from that Escort. not quite the circuit. Not quite the circuit for the Escorts. Although, of course, with this being a 1v1 shootout, any little mistake can be incredibly costly. The GTR keeps it clean around the final corner and would progress to the next round. A little mistake on this course can be very costly indeed. Our next heat, Impega in the Lamborghini Aventador SV up against Invisible AK with the Ferrari F40. The battle of the Italian cars. The heats here are all completely randomly drawn, and it would be the Aventador that would get off the line fastest. Now, of course, the Lamborghini is a very big car, a very wide car, and the plan with that is to make it difficult to pass, get a good launch, and then hope that your opponent is unable to find a way past. However, big slide on the way in to one of these hairpins, where that Aventador has slowed him down, and the Ferrari has got so much grip. It is an amazing, amazing pass around the outside for the F40 to get up a position. A lovely clean overtake as well for the Ferrari. Lamborghini not quite done yet as they head through the next couple of corners, although the Aventador is very much running out of time. There is one more turn to go. Can the Aventador sneak a pass up the inside? Not quite. It's not going to have much more in the way of opportunities, and the Ferrari is neat enough out of the final corner. The Aventador will go out of this heat. The next cars on the grid, Battle of the Germans, as my Porsche 911 Turbo would go up against a rear-wheel drive swapped Audi R8. I was a little bit sluggish on the old getaway here. The Audi with the better launch as we fly into these opening corners. Now, I carry a lot of speed through turn one, get a little bit caught out by the Audi, end up giving the R8 a bit of a bump, and that causes me more trouble than it does the Audi as I end up out wide, losing a fair bit of time with the Porsche. My plan with the 911 was make the most of kind of the rear engine, the weight over the rear for the traction off the line, and hope that I still had good handling when it came to these twisty bits. The 911 Turbo here, relatively light car. The R8 slipping and sliding around up ahead of me, and I've managed to reel in that gap a little bit as we came up towards the hotel. The Audi pretty much brushing the concrete wall, and again the Porsche good under brakes as we head into the hotel complex. I can close that gap a little bit more, but I asked too much. It was just too big a gap to regain after that early mistake, and my Porsche would be going home. It was I was pleased with it as far as S-Class cars go. I was pleased with the 911 Turbo, but couldn't make that one work. It was another matchup of the Germans, the 911 GT3 RS here going up against an R8. This R8, though, had been kept all-wheel drive, so we'd be very much expecting the R8 to get the better launch, and indeed it will fly away from the line. But that Porsche is, well, very much a track car. It's got the grip when it comes to the corners. But as we've seen, overtaking here is not easy. You've got to get the pass done very cleanly, and you have a very limited amount of time to make it work as the Audi heads through these first corners. The Porsche already caught up all of that gap pretty much that the Audi gained off of the line. They head round the next turn. You can see the speed the 911, the mid-corner speed that it can take is absolutely incredible. It's sat on the rear bumper. However, a push, a shove on the Audi ending up in the fence, bounces off the fence. The Porsche then ends up with nowhere to go on the outside, and the 911 is in all sorts of trouble there. That's the downside. If you can't quite get that overtake done cleanly in that one, cars ping off the walls around here very, very easily. The Audi will take a victory, a valiant effort, and that GT3 RS was a very quick car getting up here, but it wasn't able to get an overtake done on the Audi. So 2 Porsches down. F1 Kieran would try with the Cayenne Turbo in this penultimate heat. Blazer with a second Ford RS200, this time both all-wheel drive cars. They both get very, very similar launches. Now the Porsche considerably heavier than the Ford, but will also have a hell of a lot more power, a lot more torque as we head through these first 2 corners, completely side by side, and they remain too wide all the way up through the next section. The Ford eventually having to give the place to the big Cayenne. Of course, the advantage of the big Porsche SUV, not only power, but in terms of width in terms of size. Getting overtakes done on a car that large are not the easiest thing, although to get an overtake done, the Ford has to be getting closer through this more technical section. You would expect the smaller, the lighter RS200 to be better through that. I think he brushed the wall slightly as they head up towards this penultimate sort of corner. Then around the hotel, the RS200 can close a little bit. It's easier to get such a small car slowed down. They're both wide on the exit. They both brush the fence, and while the Ford quicker towards the end of those final couple of corners, it wasn't going to be enough. The Cayenne making its way into the next round. The Ford put up a very good fight. I mean, they went too wide for a long, long way up that hill climb. Now, there was a problem. You see, we had a slight odd number of people, so we had a random draw to one of the losing cars to go in this final heat. However, the car that got drawn, the Lamborghini, doesn't show up on the replay. Because we had to stop the race, redo the lobby, get started for this one, just to make sure we save the replay that they weren't too long. This session, yeah, fractionally different to the previous one, and apparently the Aventador is now a ghost car. You know, it's a problem. It is a problem. The Alpine here, while a good handling car, didn't have the power to deal with the Aventador. And while we can't actually see where the Aventador is on the track, it would take victory and it would progress from this round. Gotta love Forza replays. Gotta love Forza replays sometimes. Anyway, as we move on to the quarterfinals, we would now have Regliska against Invisible AK, the Nissan GTR against the Ferrari F40. The Ferrari had looked mighty good to have gone around the outside of the Lamborghini so easily. The F40 was definitely one of the cars to watch. Always likely to lose out on the battle to the first corner. That is to be expected with this. However, it's around these next turns. Again, you can see the Ferrari is right there as soon as we head into the technical section. All of that Nissan's early advantage completely gone. The F40 is sniffing around, but just struggling to get into the right position. Still, the GTR makes the car wide, and the Ferrari fires up into a gap that is never really going to last particularly long. Clips the wall, and that's enough to put the F40 in a lot of bother. Doesn't quite go for a spin, but it's an impressive amount of two-wheel action through there. It does get going again, but that's a difficulty with the overtaking. You try a slightly risky manoeuvre, and it is very easy with the concrete walls either side for it to not quite pay off, and that would be the F40 sadly out of this one. For the second quarterfinal, it'll be Murray with that Saleen S7 against the Lotus 211. Two fast rear-wheel drive cars in this one. The Lotus, very, very light, and does get a good start. Again, for the rear-wheel drive cars, it is one of the fastest starting vehicles in all of this, but carries too much speed into turn one, clonks the wall on the outside. That then puts him all out of shape by the time we get towards turn two, and that puts the Saleen up into the lead, and the Saleen only gets faster as we go through this course. The start is probably where the Saleen is weakest, getting off the line and so on. It isn't as fast as a number of other vehicles. However, the tighter, the more technical the course gets, the Saleen just goes faster and faster. While the Lotus certainly not too bad at the later stages of this course either. All it takes is one mistake. All it takes is one mistake on here, and you will probably be eliminated. So the Saleen will make a progress, will win its quarterfinal. The Lotus, sadly, will be out of the competition. For the third of the quarterfinals, it would be Audi versus Audi. Yep, the random draw would put the two R8s against one another. Stevie's the all-wheel drive car, Yami's the rear-wheel drive converted R8 as they head off the line. Of course, the purple car always likely to lead the way as they head through these first corners. However, we'd seen the handling from the blue car, and yeah, it's going to be lighter. It's going to be lighter than its competitor here. It's a huge dive up the inside. It's a lovely overtake from the blue R8 to get that pass done. The purple car still having a look around through these next corners. Now, we had been seeing the blue car struggling a little bit for grip, some big oversteer moments, and you won't be getting as much of that with the all-wheel drive car. It's a big two-wheel moment. They're both brushing the concrete wall as they try to find ways to put the power down. They try to get out of these corners as quickly as possible. We head into the hotel. The lead car a little bit wide and still running wide on the exit, struggling to get that power down. The drag race towards the line, though, and it will be the blue R8 that makes the progress. Yabi's car moves on. Fantastic overtake to get that position. It was... it was a fairly forceful overtake, but a decisive one at that. We've got the Aventador Spooky back again. Kieran's Porsche Cayenne would be drawn against the Lamborghini that again wasn't showing up on the replays. This time around, the Aventador didn't have the advantage of the launch. The Cayenne, the faster car, getting off the line. And in fact, the Aventador was not quite able to live with the speed, amazingly, of the big Porsche. We were expecting the Cayenne to be a little bit of a silly entrance. It was always going to be very fast off the line and good power and torque, but we weren't necessarily expecting it to have the handling. However, it was proving to be a very, very capable vehicle, getting up this mounting, having eliminated an RS200 and then eliminated the Lamborghini. So, semi-final time. The first draw, it would be a Ray Glisker's Nissan up against that Cayenne. And the way that the random draw had worked out, it would be one rear-wheel drive and one all-wheel drive car in the final. Once more, the Cayenne's mighty launch was enough to get it into the lead as we head through these first couple of corners. The GTR taking a look at a little bit of a different line, but ending up out a bit too wide. And then you've lost that all-important momentum, and you don't have very much time to gain, or you don't have much time to try and recuperate that sort of gap as the Cayenne continues to keep things neat and tidy. It's a horribly huge curb on the inside through a few of these corners. We bounce our way through the next turns. The Cayenne can use its many powers and many torques up towards the hotel. The Nissan perhaps reeling that Porsche in a little bit as we come through this final sector. Of course, the big SUV is going to struggle with the more technical sections on the track, but the giant Porsche would make it to the final. The GT3 RS by 911 Turbo, no, but the SUV, that'll be through. And the car to join it, well, that would either be Muri's Saleen S7 or Yami's Audi R8. The Saleen had been making impressive work with overtakes. The R8 had also done some impressive overtakes himself as they run side by side through the first turn. The Audi, though, not quite able to keep up with the pace of that Saleen. And I think that was the first time the Saleen had actually beaten a car to turn one. Its initial acceleration hadn't been the greatest, but its speed through these later parts is, as I said before, where it's going to come good. The Audi continuing to wiggle its way around the road, was pushing extra hard, knowing he was running out of time, and it was too much speed for the R8. Clonks the concrete wall, pings off the outside barrier, and that would be the end of the Audi. Saleen would end up taking, well, that's like a fairly straightforward victory. Uncontested in the latter stages, but it had been one of the fastest of the rear-wheel drive cars, and it set us up for an unusual but very interesting final. The fast-starting Cayenne and very wide Cayenne against the mighty grip of the Saleen, and the Saleen that had managed to overtake a fair few cars on circuit. So, Muri versus Kieran for this final ascent, and as expected, the Porsche bolts off the line very nicely. Wants to build as much of a gap as he possibly can, because as soon as we get into this technical section, the Saleen is going to start pulling back. The Cayenne does enjoy, with these little straights to begin with. The Cayenne does enjoy a nice margin. The Saleen's not close enough to try the big dive that we saw from the R8, although a big slide from that Porsche has got him in trouble. He's a little bit out of shape. The Saleen shoving the nose up the inside won't get the move completed through there, though. The Porsche has got the acceleration, and still the Saleen can't find a gap to get alongside. The Porsche is wiggling around on the exit of the corner. The Saleen dives out of the slipstreams to the inside as we head into the hotel. They're going to go too wide around this final corner. The Porsche just doesn't have the grip to match the American supercar, and it doesn't have the acceleration to do it either. The Saleen will take victory. It all came down to that final corner. The Saleen probed and prodded its way through, trying to get an overtake done. Finally found the opportunity and would get the pass completed. All of the Porsche's launch, all of the Porsche's acceleration early on, and the superior grip of the Saleen would prevail eventually. Fantastic final. Fantastic final indeed between those two cars. It was a good fun event to do. It was a good fun event to do. It was really interesting the way that the builds played out. You know, you could go for high-powered all-wheel drive vehicles knowing you'd get the lead. You get the lead off the line, but knowing that the lightweight rear-wheel drive, handling-focused cars would be flying later on, and if they could find ways past, were probably the quicker car to go for. But overtaking is difficult. Not impossible. Not impossible at all. We saw some truly fantastic passes, but certainly difficult. I did like my Porsche. I think my Porsche could have done a little bit better. I just got a bit unlucky in my first round, a little mistake. And again, I couldn't get past the R8 quick enough. The Ferrari F40 was another car that was very, very quick up this course as well. That was a little bit unfortunate in his semi-final, I think it was, that went out. Quarterfinal, sorry, it went out in. But yeah, the Dubai hill climb showdown was an interesting thing to do. I highly recommend. It's in many ways the most fun use I've found for the Dubai circuit. So yeah, I do recommend you give it a try. See what different cars you can get up that climb as quickly as possible. That, though, is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.